Hey, what's up, YouTube? I wanted to give another update for the developer journal for ChordieApp. I have a progress update on the keyboard. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I accomplished, what I got stuck on, and the way that I got past this roadblock. Watch out, Nala. There you go. Okay, so first thing, everything you see here is programmed by hand. The way these black keys look, whatnot, it's all custom. It's all a lot of just path.line2, path.quadratic2, front of the key, for instance. You can see it right here. I spent the most time figuring out how to get these shadows working. So you can see these, the shadow stuff that's going on here. So I want to talk a little bit about the problem that appeared. And I have a mechanism. Let's see, I can just disable this refresher class right here to demonstrate this. Let me rerun this and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'll talk about how I found the cause of this bug. All right, so if I play this note right here, and I play this note, you can see that, sorry, I'll do that one more time. You can see there's a shadow right here on this left edge. All right, now when I play this, this note, that shadow doesn't go away unless I actually mouse over it. So I spent probably 2 days, not non-stop because I got students, I got clients, but I struggled on this one to figure out what was causing this. It didn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to talk through the solution. So the way that I went about finding this was, the first thing I did, in this paint function, I was like, what is making this thing, it refreshes a little bit of the time. If I press this note and I press this note, it is there. If I lift this up and then I press this one down, it goes away. It's very strange. Why is it if I press this one, why doesn't this key refresh? If I press this and then I press this one, why doesn't the key aligned with this vertical axis, why doesn't that key refresh? And I was like, let's start digging into how the base class of this extended keyboard component actually starts drawing. So we add some breakpoints here. I'm going to show a little bit of debugger stuff because it's kind of neat. I'll zoom on it so you can see the values and whatnot. If I go here and I jump in to this function call, there's all of this code where I get to see what actually gets drawn. Draw white key, all this other kind of stuff. And let's see, step over this. Let me just add a breakpoint here. Basically, what this turned into was saying, all right, if it's not refreshing this certain bounding area, what is it refreshing? Now, this is the very first time it has refreshed the component, I believe. No, I'm not sure. We'll find out. But basically, this component is 730 pixels wide and 625 pixels tall. The graphics context that's being passed in has different dimensions. If we look under the context and we look under the last clip rectangle, you can see it has a width of 92 and a height of 625. But what position does it have? Down here you can see this, the component, X and 215, the X is 0 and the Y is 215. Whereas this thing, what bounding box is actually being passed in? Again, go to the context, go to the last clip rectangle, and we can see under the point, it's passing in a X value of 456 with a width of 92. So what that means is we've got this whole component that's like this big, and it's trying to repaint the whole thing, but the graphics context that's being passed in is saying, no, you're only going to repaint this much. And it turned out, if I get rid of these breakpoints, rid of that breakpoint too. It turned out that when I press this key, the rectangle for this key from this edge right here to this edge right here is what gets refreshed. And then as soon as I push this key, the rectangle for this key from here to here is what gets refreshed. And the rest of the context does not get drawn. And this was tricky to figure out. I ended up solving it by looking at what actually happens in MIDI keyboard component under the this repaint note thing, because this gets called in where is it? I think it gets called well, the mechanism that they use in here is the handle node on code. every time you play a note on your MIDI controller, one of these guys, it sets a flag in this thing. And when that flag gets set, there's a timer that constantly pulls this thing to see if anything has changed. And once it determines that something has been changed, it says, okay, you're going to repaint this individual note. You're not going to repaint anything else. You're just going to repaint this individual note. That's what happens here where it says get rectangle for the key. If we go back to this thing, that's where it's saying, give me the bounding box for just this key. And we're only going to repaint that region. The problem is that under the juice component base class, under paint, it's painting every single key. So if you've got 88 keys, it's calling draw white key for that entire, it's calling draw white key for every key in the keyboard. So if you got 88 keys, it's calling this, 52 times and calling this for the other 88 minus 52 times. A lot of these aren't actually being drawn because they are outside that graphics context. Note to self, there's an optimization that can be done. That's over here in the, if I'm getting a little off on a tangent in this draw white note, I can easily do if g dot, let's see if I can get the area. Let's see, I'm sure there's something with get clip bounds. If clip bounds dot contains, if it contains area, if it doesn't contain the area, to nearest int. If it doesn't contain it, don't draw anything. Micro optimization, because it's like I showed before. We're repainting the entire component, but the graphics context is trimmed to only do this one thing. So what is the point of drawing all of this stuff? And then same for the black keys. What is the point of drawing all this stuff if it's not actually being written into the graphics context? That's just eating up a ton of CPU. So there's a potential optimization. I'm not actually sure if that works. Let's just toss that in here and see if it does. We'll run that and see what happens. Maybe it'll be cool. Maybe it'll draw a lot faster. All right, that's definitely a problem. So we definitely needed to draw the black key. Okay, we'll leave that alone. We'll just leave that as it is. We don't need that. Okay, so that was cool. Figuring out that stumped me for a few days. Now with regard to the solution. So I borrowed the same pattern where we have an atomic flag that gets set every time a note on message happens or a note off message happens. And that is accomplished by just listening to this MIDI keyboard state. Yeah, so we set this flag. When a note on message comes in, set it to true. And then we've got a timer that's running 20 times a second, and that timer is checking whether or not that flag has been set to true. Remember, that flag only gets set to true whenever a note on happens or a note off happens. Outside of that, it's not going to do anything. So the keyboard base, like I showed, in the Juice MIDI component, it is repainting only that specific rectangle. And what I said was I'm not going to repaint that individual rectangle. What I'm actually going to do, where did this go? That's over here. What I'm actually going to do is repaint the whole component. So there are, costs and benefits to this. The first benefit is that this solved all of the graphical glitches. Okay, let me turn this back on, rerun. The shadow bug, which held me up for 2 days, totally gone, which meant I could implement all of the shadow code, which makes this thing look real nice, and it looks extra nice when this is small, and I'm doing that. That looks super good. So I'm very happy with that. I think everybody who starts using ChordieApp after this and gets this keyboard is also going to be really happy because this looks a lot better than the previous ones. So the cost, this is a very simple structure. It's a very simple class. It just does two things. It listens for MIDI note on, note off messages, and then it has a timer which just tells it, hey, if you got note on messages or note off messages, repaint the whole component. Very, very simple. But the cost is, I still have the MIDI keyboard component base class, which is, I still have the base class timer stuff that's happening in this guy. This is still trying to repaint the individual rectangles. And then this guy is trying to repaint, again, the whole thing after doing all that. So potentially it's repainting twice. I haven't actually checked output stuff. And I've got some debug messages here. So you know what? This is actually a good opportunity to find out if I am in fact getting 2 calls to paint or not. You go to this. Where is that debug message? Right there. I'm getting rid of that one. And I'm going to go to draw a white note. I'm going to turn this message back on. And I'm going to turn this message back on. Now, this output, every time paint is called, which is what happens when you call, repaint that rectangle or repaint the whole thing. Every time that happens, it prints out 2 blank lines and then it draws all of this stuff. So as we can see here, it's only doing, it's only repainting it once. So I'm going to trigger a note and we'll see what it does. If it is actually calling paint twice, which is what actually draws all the keys, then I know that I will probably need to eventually replace the entire MIDI keyboard component class with a duplicate copy that has this modified timer callback. If it doesn't, then my solution works fine, and the cost of an extra call to repaint is nothing really. All right, so let's see what we get. Oh, so let's see. Let me clear this and then trigger a note. All right. Okay, so it says refreshing note 65, but it's only doing the screen once. And it did that because it just popped onto screen. So for this, I actually need to make Xcode small. Let's see, how can I do this? Just shrink this over. All right, and we're just focusing on this debug output right here. Okay, and then I press clear. All right, so it's only printing it out once, which means paint is only being called once. So that's fantastic. So this solution that I've got is good. I can use that. That's great. So that makes me really happy. This bug held me up for like 2 days because I just could not figure out why was this region not being repainted. And in hindsight, I can honestly say I definitely learned a little bit about how some of the Juice graphics optimizations are implemented. And I learned a little bit about the graphic context itself. So that's good times. So the next things for me to implement are the note names, which will appear in this red region. I need to add a little bit of need to figure out why there's no, there should be a shadow that appears right here. And then sustain handling. So that way when I play this note, hold the sustain pedal down and then re-trigger that note a bunch of times, it does that flashy thing that I showed before. So that's what you'll get to see in the next developer update. But anyway, I'm happy to share that these graphics look a lot better. Let's switch to using the big one. That's going to be down here in piano roll container. That's where I'm doing this. Number of keys is going to be, number of white keys is going to be 52. And let's see, I think it's in the extended MIDI keyboard controller where I set the range. Is that where I'm doing it? Yeah, set a variable range. No, I'm doing it somewhere else. It must be down here, main component. Yeah, right here. All right, we'll get rid of that. Now I should have an 88 key keyboard. And this shouldn't be this massive. Let's see what it gives me. Yeah, there's the 88 key keyboard. Let me get rid of this. And let's go back to our original size. And this is resizable, and it should look really nice. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good to me. I spent a lot of time staring at images of grand piano keys that were nicely lit and using digital color meter, using this thing to like inspect what color is used when you mouse over it and all that kind of stuff, and figured out some good colors that make it look like it's actually lit up. Anyway, I'm really happy with how this looks. I'm not sure if I will make these colors customizable because it took me so long to build this, and I think that the choices I made are good choices that a lot of people will not complain about. But I may make the the black key note color. You can't see it here because it lights up to a different color when I mouse over this. I may make it so that the other color, that color is choosable, but I'm not sure. Anyway, all these colors will eventually be choosable. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. So let me know your comments. I'm excited to continue working on this and improving it. I especially like how it's very resizable and maintains all this stuff, and it's just gonna look awesome. So I'm really happy for that. Okay, I'll talk to you in the next video. Thank you so much for supporting the app, and thank you for anybody who's watching this and is a developer and is curious about some of these juice problems and C++ problems. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to get my help or advice or input on any of your juice projects, I have a membership that you can join where you can pick my brain about how I would solve a lot of the problems that you're encountering in your project. There's a whole spiel on my website about who that mentorship is for, who that membership is for. It's basically if you're an aspiring developer and you're tired of being stuck, I can help you get unstuck. All right, I will talk to you in the next video. Thank you so much. Deuces.